To lead, to listen, to inspire. Guiding principles for the role of ambassador.
I am naming a great friend, Dan Rooney, as the United States ambassador to Ireland.
It was just a great honor for the whole family to see that happen for my father.
The Ambassador Dan Rooney was a quiet and compassionate leader who worked tirelessly to bring championships to his hometown of Pittsburgh and lasting peace to his homeland of Ireland.
I do believe my grandfather felt like he could play a role in helping create peace and making a difference in what we call our motherland.
Historic day, isn't it, for all Irish NFL fans?
The NFL will play an historic first ever regular season game in Dublin, Ireland. The designated home team is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Now, an NFL regular season game in Dublin, Ireland, brings together two of Dan Rooney's greatest passions, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the people of Ireland.
He was an incredibly special man. He believed very much that American football could be popular on a global basis. The connection between the Steelers and Ireland is just so strong that it was a natural choice.
It feels like a culmination of a life's work for him, us getting over there, playing this regular season game.
This is a Steelers story, The Ambassador.
Welcome to our presentation, and this is going to be just a little short presentation of some of the bits and pieces we found about your family, how really Irish you are, which is very. So James and Mary are your 4 times great-grandparents, all working in the iron industry.
We were working in steel well before 1933.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I thought that was the funniest. I mean, talk about written in the stars, you know? And these guys, I mean, before 1933, we're talking 1861, they were working in steel. So this is literally in your blood, you know, no pun intended. And
the Rooney's Irish ancestry can be traced back several generations to Newry, County Down. Forced out by famine and motivated by opportunity, both sides of Dan Rooney's family immigrated from Ireland and eventually settled in Pittsburgh, where Dan was born in 1932.
When my grandfather came to America, he worked in the mill for about a month, and he said he knew that was not for him. And he opened a pub, which was right here next to the stadium, which was called Exposition Park, which was the original stadium here. And because of that, that's why his sons all became athletes and then got in the football business in 1933.
It was that year, 1933, when Dan's father Art, fondly known as the Chief, founded the team that would become the Pittsburgh Steelers. With football surrounding his childhood, Dan excelled as a high school quarterback and worked in various roles throughout the Steelers organization.
He says, well, what about doing this? And I said, well, I'd like to run the football team. I said, this is what I'd like to do.
While attending college at Duquesne University, Dan Rooney married Patricia Regan, who was working in the Steelers offices. Their marriage consolidated the Irish heritage on both sides of the family.
There's a lot of talk about Ireland. My grandfather, my mother's father, was loved to come home and sing Irish songs, and there was great awareness of Ireland and being Irish in both, you know, the Rooney side and on the Regan side, my mother's side, and as I grew up, for sure.
And when we were looking at the county, these red dots represent the mid-19th century. Every individual Rooney family, and the bigger the circle is, the more families were there. So you are from, this is County Down here, and as you can see, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. This part of your family history, it's amazing, and it's very solidified, I think, in your family story.
Here is Bradshaw, rolling right. Bradshaw gets a big block and fires into the end zone, complete for the touchdown. Hitting Larry Brown in the end zone. One going after covered in a jungle. Swan catches it on a circus catch. Number one. The Steelers have won the Super Bowl for the second consecutive year.
With Dan Rooney as team president in 1976, the Steelers were on top of the football world, celebrating back-to-back Super Bowl titles. But in that same moment, he knew Ireland was suffering through a turbulent period known as the Troubles, a violent conflict that devastated the Irish economy and its people.
In the 70s, Ireland was in many ways a place without hope, and that was certainly true in Northern Ireland. In my own hometown of Derry, for example, there would have been 80% male unemployment. There was bombs in the streets every day, there were people being shot every day of the week. It was a very, very bleak place.
The battle lines were drawn between the Unionists, mostly Protestants in Northern Ireland, who wanted to remain within the UK, and the Nationalists, mostly Irish Catholics, who wanted a united Ireland. Paramilitary groups on both sides caused decades of bloodshed.
The bombings, the shootings, the killing, the sectarianism, the fear, and the lack of hope and sense of despair around when will these troubles ever end?
It was really very tragic times. I mean, 3,600 people died in the Troubles. If you sort of made the equivalent of that in the US, it would be millions.
You know, you had these, what they ironically called peace walls, right? Walls dividing communities.
An 8-foot-high steel barricade, which will even prevent Catholic and Protestant residents from looking over.
On one side of the wall might be a Protestant community, on the other side a Catholic, literally right down the middle of the street. There was no talk. There was no dialogue. There was no bridging those differences. And to overcome that required people who were determined to find a way to bring people together. And that was the Ireland Funds.
The Ireland Funds. Dan Rooney's bold initiative intended to help stabilise his troubled homeland. That same year, 1976, he joined forces with Tony O'Reilly, an Irish-born rugby hero turned prominent Pittsburgh businessman. Together they spent decades raising funds for education, employment and economic development in Ireland by directly engaging those of Irish descent.
Thank you all so much for being here this evening. What happens in this room this evening makes a real impact. In the 12 months since we've all gathered, the Ireland Funds, which was started here in Pittsburgh, as you know, by Dan and Patricia Rooney and Tony O'Reilly 49 years ago. In the last 12 months, we have made grants of over $28 million to 300 organisations all over the island of Ireland. Dan and Tony had a very distinct vision for the Ireland Funds when they started. They wanted to be all about philanthropy. They wanted to galvanise a network of people who had the ability and the passion for Ireland to do something meaningful, and they wanted to make that sustainable.
And gave an opportunity to the global Irish family, or those people right across the world who had Irish roots, to contribute to the pursuit of peace and reconciliation on our island.
The Ireland Fund became kind of his second job, so to speak. He would go over there and spend most of the month of June over there every year, and just trying to help build the Ireland Fund into, you know, in what it became.
He saw the connection the Rooney family has to County Down, where the Rooney family immigrated from. I do believe my grandfather felt like he could play a role in helping create peace and making a difference in what we call our motherland.
So for him it was personal, right? It was family, not just something historic or nice to do. He felt he had to.
Dan Rooney devoted himself to the Ireland Funds, yet he still managed to have great impact as an NFL owner. 2 players' strikes in the 1980s threatened the very future of the league, and it was Dan Rooney who led the negotiations with the Players' Union and helped craft labour peace.
Well, Dan was known as the key, I think, to our labor relationship for several decades. I think, again, he established that trust and respect with the players. He felt the input of the players was incredibly important. And I think Dan not only was critical in solving that problem in 1982, but several collective bargaining agreements after that. His wise, reasonable, and patient understanding made a difference, ultimately, in us getting an agreement that works for everybody.
Dan was a hard man, but he was fair. He said that when you had the upper hand and you know you had the upper hand, leave something on the table for the other guy.
The way I describe him to friends and colleagues is that he was a combination of velvet and steel. He was tough, but I also saw that, he cared about people and he was willing to work with people even when there were differences.
A close friend and ally of Dan Rooney's was Irishman John Hume, a moral force for peace on the island, who eventually became one of Northern Ireland's most prominent political leaders.
Why can't they come and do a much more important job, which is to get into dialogue to produce lasting stability and lasting peace for all?
My dad, John Hume, was the leader of the Social Democratic and Labour Party, which was the main nationalist party in Northern Ireland. He was 100% against the violence, and his primary aim in life was to end that conflict.
Some people described him as the Martin Luther King of Ireland, and just a great leader and someone who believed in resolving problems through peace.
And this is something that my dad would often say to me about Dan. He says he's a man who believes in something and how society should be. And I think he saw something that was wrong in Ireland at the time, and he decided that he was going to do something about it.
Although Dan Rooney worked tirelessly to promote social programs and improve Irish society, the violence in Ireland continued. Then, in 1995, President Bill Clinton asked former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell to mediate, and he later became the neutral chairman of the peace talks.
There was a very high level of mistrust, hostility, and it was difficult to find anyone who could gain and retain the respect of both communities. And I think Ambassador Rooney was one of those who did so because of his personality, his charm, his integrity, and all of the other reasons that made him so successful in every part of his life.
Finally, after 3 years of debate and compromise, the hostilities ended in 1998 with an historic peace agreement signed on Good Friday. Later that year, John Hume Sr., who had a prominent role in the negotiations, shared the Nobel Peace Prize.
Dan Rooney started working with my father in 1976. The Good Friday Agreement was signed in 1998. That was 22 years. 22 years of coming back and forward to Ireland, opening doors in Washington, D.C.
I believe we live in a time of hope and history rhyming. Standing here in front of the Guildhall, looking out over these historic walls, I see a peaceful city, a safe city, a hopeful city.
Dan Rooney was not one of the politicians who signed the Good Friday Agreement, but his fingerprints, without a doubt, are all over it.
I think the work that Dan did, and then the work that Dan insisted we continue to support after the Good Friday Agreement was signed, has been critical.
The work that's done in Ireland is really important, and the Ireland Fund has really was very much involved with the peace process that happened.
He tried to do his part, mostly behind the scenes, but people knew how much he was doing, how committed he was to the cause of peace.
Just months before the Good Friday Agreement would bring lasting peace, Dan Rooney's other goal of bringing professional football to Ireland was realised. His Pittsburgh Steelers travelled to Dublin for the first ever NFL game on the island, a pre-season matchup against the Chicago Bears, dubbed the American Bowl.
The Steelers and American pro football hit Irish soil for the first time. The two teams fulfilled the dreams of Dan Rooney.
Ireland is really a nice place to be. Our players are very much enjoying themselves.
He was also big on, connecting Pittsburgh to Ireland and, continuing to just help the relations between the U.S. and the Irish in any way that he could, helping bring the preseason game over to Ireland in 1997 when the Steelers played the Bears at Croke Park.
It was important for Dan to continue to give back to Ireland, to his beloved Steelers. And to be able to bring those two together, I think, was magical for him.
Steelers! Yes! Steelers rule! Steelers!
This is a very successful Irish family that are bringing their team to Ireland and to the historic Croke Park. I know it was a non-league game, it's an exhibition game in a sense. That didn't take from the atmosphere that it generated and created.
I know our players like Cordell Stewart and Jerome Bettis were able to really travel around a bit and interact with the Irish.
It was a preseason game, so you don't put a lot of stock in the preseason game. But what I do remember is going to the pub and getting a pint. That was like one of those things that was on my bucket list. When I go to Dublin, I gotta get a pint.
It's a new year, a new opportunity, and we've got some unfinished business. Let's go.
Having the Steelers experience the Irish culture meant the world to both Dan and Patricia Rooney. But Mrs. Rooney also had her eyes on a different prize.
Yeah, well, there was a beautiful Waterford trophy that was created to be presented to the winner of the game between the Bears and the Steelers.
There is something at stake in this game today, no question about it. It is this American Bowl trophy, Waterford Crystal, yes, made here in Waterford, Ireland.
So my mother saw the trophy and started telling Bill Cowher how great it would be to have that trophy. And when Bill sort of got wind of what the game meant and what winning that trophy would mean to my mother, he said he had to put in a different game plan than you normally would for a preseason game.
Cordell Stewart straight back to pass. He's going to air one out. Near sideline, CJ catching it. And Stewart with a handoff to the bus, and he steps into the end zone behind good blocking for that Steeler touchdown. Back is Cordell, short drop, guns it to Yancey Thigpen, embarrasses Harris again, first down.
The Steelers did win the game, and there's a trophy still on display at our practice facility to memorialize the success we had that day.
And they hand it to Willie Parker. Finds a lane. He's on his way. Look out. Foot race, 45-50. Willie Parker, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5. Willie, touchdown. Willie Parker, 75 yards. And this place is a Steeler maniac's haven. And they pitch it to the left. And now here's the handoff on the reverse to Antoine Randall. He's going to throw it down the field. There's a man open. Touchdown, Pittsburgh. Hines Ward.
Bill Cowher was saying that he wanted to get this one to give owner Dan Rooney his 5th Super Bowl ring. He did that.
I've been waiting a long time to do this. Mr. Rooney, this is yours, man.
The 2000s would bring the next great era of Steelers football. Dan Rooney's team won Super Bowl 40 under Bill Cowher and Super Bowl 43 under Mike Tomlin.
Will it be picked off? James Harrison has it. He's running up the sideline. Harrison jumping over people. And that's a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
He scrambles around, throws it back corner of the end zone.
Santonio with a touchdown. Santonio home. The Pittsburgh Steelers have won the Super Bowl for a 6th time.
Then 6 weeks later, on March 17, 2009, St. Patrick's Day, the culmination of more than 30 years of dedication to the people of Ireland.
I am also proud today to announce that I am naming a great friend, Dan Rooney, as the United States Ambassador to Ireland. He will be an outstanding...
To really get the respect from the president to be appointed to such a role, just incredibly exciting for him at the time, and something that I think towards the end of his life was a great kind of last act for him to do outside of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
To be able to serve our country, I will do the best job that I possibly can.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Rooney.
Obviously winning 6 Super Bowls, is a huge accomplishment and probably mattered very, very deeply to the ambassador. But I think being nominated to be the U.S. ambassador to Ireland ranks pretty high up there in terms of his personal accomplishments.
I know how truly special that moment was to him. I remember the look on his face and Mrs. Rooney's face and how much it meant to them and the excitement they had.
The funny part about my dad becoming the ambassador is that he spent so much time in Ireland even prior to that we used to kid him and say, "You think you're the ambassador to Ireland?" It was just a great honor for the whole family to see that happen for my father.
I think I was more surprised, like, wait a second, he's supposed to be here with us. That's like having your grandpa leave. But when you knew how much it meant to him and the family, then you were happy for him.
In May of that year, the Super Bowl champs were honored by President Obama at the White House. And soon after, the ambassador moved to Dublin, and he brought some Steelers flair with him.
His calling card wasn't a business card. It was one of those gold Steeler pins, and he would give them to everybody he met, from doormen to Taoiseachs to presidents to ball boys.
Dan enjoyed the position of ambassador.
I need one for the ambassador.
And of course, the Irish people were pleased, really thrilled, when he announced that he was going to go to each of the 32 counties.
He was bound and determined to visit every county in Ireland, including the 6 counties in the north of Ireland that hadn't been done before.
And he held a town hall in every single county he visited where he met with local people.
Nobody else had done that. He was out and about all the time. I mean, he was adored.
Very open, very sincere. Some people have these values, have these qualities. They lie dormant, they're not put at the service of others. Dan Rooney did not make that mistake.
Ambassador Rooney became close friends with his neighbour, Martin McAleese, whose wife, Mary, was President of Ireland at the time.
I think Dan Rooney was exceptional, and I spent many evenings with him, particularly on occasions when the Steelers were playing. The only problem with those games were that they ran right into the next morning, like about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you were completely wrecked.
While living in Ireland, the ambassador did miss being around the Steelers. So he found yet another way to bring football to the Irish people.
When you were named to this post by President Obama in 2009, what did you first think was most important to accomplish?
They said they wanted me to be here for the 4th of July and to put on the activities for that. And we've done so and have a great 4th of July.
So every embassy around the world hosts a 4th of July party. There'd be a drinks reception. Often there would be fireworks.
And so that very first 4th of July, it was of all things, a baseball or a softball game. That was never going to happen again. Baseball's great, but there were going to be football at the next 4th of July celebration. Initially, I was like, okay, great. We'll put up a couple of cones and we'll have a flag football game. But obviously, I didn't fully understand what he thought a flag football game should look like.
So he reached out to his friends in Croke Park, who run the National Gaelic Stadium, and asked would they help us build a football stadium in the back garden of the U.S. Ambassador's residence in the Phoenix Park. So, as one does.
He wanted bleachers there, he wanted co-commentators, and we worked on a plan to just really make something very, very spectacular.
If I told you the number of times he sent me different diagrams and different ways he was going to set the field up in the backyard at the residence, and to see that all come to life and how involved he was, it was consummate Dan Rooney.
Remember being some, kind of like me being more surprised and shocked, like, holy cow, that Mr. Rooney went all out for this.
Just seeing how big of a production that game was, it truly felt like you were at Acrisure Stadium on a Sunday or Super Bowl Sunday with the game ball being brought in by guys jumping out of a plane.
The game ball was parachuted in. I mean, a guy brings it down, and so it just, those are things that you see at NFL games.
It was showbiz. We hadn't seen anything of that scale, or certainly I hadn't. The whole setup was just incredible. I had never seen anything like it before, and we just added a small ingredient with the parachute drop to that.
Who brings a game ball to a flag football game in their back garden with parachutists? So it was a little bit over the top, but it was tons of fun. So it was just a really special event.
Katie Keogh, who was in charge of engagement at the embassy, always talks about that it was the best, she calls it friend-raising event, and that this was essential to building the database, to having these relationships with other diplomats, with people throughout Ireland. And she said there has never been, and she says there will never be, anything as effective as the football game that my father put on in Ireland.
As a man at the end of it, and that is a great catch indeed.
Nice patience by Dan Rooney. He put us all to work. I was part of the broadcast group. That looked like a sack to me, Paul.
For people who wouldn't know what that means, what does that mean?
Defense tackles the guy behind the line of scrimmage for a loss.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Probably realized then and there that I did not belong broadcasting games, but it was a great experience for me.
I had the opportunity to be invited out and play in their July 4th flag football game. It had all the razzmatazz that you actually expect from, you know, it's July 4th celebration in the U.S. Ambassador's residence.
I think I asked him if I could play, and he definitely wouldn't let me play in the game. So I think I was just there as kind of an honorary captain, if you will.
That was big for him to be able to show off the island and show off Ireland to a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, who meant so much to our family and to our organization. I know my grandfather was really proud to bring our quarterback over to Ireland.
You know, it was just such a treat and an honor and a blessing to see my boss over there in his, you know, at a place that he loved, and it just meant so much to him. So for Mr. Rooney to do that over there for this flag football game in his backyard, in essence, was just above and beyond.
It was while trying to perfect that backyard football field with the help of the Croke Park staff that a certain legend was born about a lone cherry tree.
That's an interesting legend about the tree. I'm not sure that officially it's ever been mentioned or acknowledged.
The funny story, I guess, with this was that the pitch itself was curtailed by a cherry tree. So it reduced the pitch maybe about 10 yards off what he wanted as full size. The following January I came back, looked across the garden, and the cherry tree had gone. So I said, Ambassador, the tree is gone, did you move it? He said, no, the tree was struck by lightning.
I've been a professional diplomat for 35 years. There's a thing about plausible deniability, so I can't really say too much about a particular tree that may or may not have existed.
It was, the tree disappeared, let's put it that way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I really want to say a special thanks to our great committee that have put this together and have done so well, and it's so meaningful of what's going to happen in Ireland.
After his time as ambassador ended in 2012, Rooney remained dedicated to the island for the rest of his life. The Ireland Funds he co-founded nearly 50 years ago has raised more than $650 million.
He is one of those unspoken heroes. I think it's why the Rooney family is revered in Ireland. He wasn't alone, and he would be the first to have told you that, but he never gave up.
Dan Rooney was not only a winner in Pittsburgh, he was a champion for Ireland. In many ways, bringing an NFL regular season game to Dublin is a celebration of his legacy.
I think his legacy is very clear about the way he improved the relationship between our two countries.
Thank you very much.
The connection between the Steelers and Ireland and the NFL was just so strong that it was a natural choice to have the Steelers there. And I know Dan will be smiling down at all of us.
I think his legacy in Ireland is immense, and I think it's multifaceted. I mean, his legacy as ambassador, where people who didn't know him beforehand got to know him, got to meet him. You know, got to meet him as a very proud American, as a proud Irish American. I think there's his legacy as founder of the Ireland Funds, and then I think there's his legacy as just an incredibly decent, smart, thoughtful person.
I think the legacy of the late Ambassador Rooney in Ireland is peace.
When Dan Rooney first came to Ireland in the 70s, it was a place without hope. If you look at Dublin in 2025, this country has been transformed.
So there's something really special about taking the Steelers here for a fully fledged league game. You know, so it's almost like the whole dream has come round in full circle.
It feels like a culmination of a life's work for him, us getting over there, playing this regular season game.
It would mean everything to him, especially seeing all the hard work that his son Art Rooney and his grandson Dan Rooney have put into this. I know he's smiling from up above.
It's so special. It's special for the Rooney family. Mr. Rooney's going to have the best seat in the house.
Oh, he would be overjoyed. He wouldn't be jumping up and down, but he'd be very, very delighted about it.
My father would just have the biggest smile on his face that you could imagine, and my mother, I should say. I'm sure they'll be looking down on this game and enjoying it very much.
I know that he's somewhere smiling at all this with Mrs. Rooney at his side, really excited that the Steelers and the Steeler Nation is coming to Dublin, and we can't wait to welcome them.
To come back for a regular season game with the legacy of the Rooney family in Ireland, this matters, and this is huge. And that's because of that special history, that special relationship between Ambassador Rooney and the people of Ireland.